The WNBA draft ratings are officially in, and boy, oh boy, do we have some things to talk about.
Let's talk about the elephant in the locker room. You know who we're talking about. Geno Auriemma, the UConn legend, the king of passive-aggressive interviews, and apparently the unofficial president of the Anybody But Caitlin Clark Club. His crown jewel, Paige Bueckers, just had her WNBA draft moment. But instead of the media fireworks we witnessed when Caitlin Clark went #1 overall last year, what did we get this time? A muted reception and, frankly, a big ol' reality check.
For the last few months, the mainstream media, they have tried to convince us that Paige Bueckers is a draw. Me personally, I think she's a star, but I'm not exactly convinced that she is a draw.
Let's not sugarcoat this. Paige Bueckers' draft viewership didn't just underwhelm, it flopped compared to Clark's. A respectable 1.3 million people tuned in for Bueckers, but when Caitlin Clark declared for the draft last year, a staggering 2.6 million showed up. That's double the eyeballs, double the buzz. And if you think this is just coincidence, you haven't been paying attention.
You'll find a lot of stars, but there's only a handful of draws. There's only a handful of people over the past 40 or 50 years who have the impact, the drawing power to elevate the product into the mainstream.
The media has been doing gymnastics to crown Bueckers the next face of women's basketball. ESPN has been running highlight reels, dropping feature interviews, and even splicing in that iconic Geno Auriemma smirk in post-game pressers, just to keep the narrative alive. But here's the thing. No amount of Connecticut mystique or coach speak can cover up what the numbers clearly show. Clark is the draw. Full stop.
Whether or not Paige Bueckers is a star or a draw, that remains to be seen. Judging by the ratings for the Dump Diver draft the other night, Paige Bueckers is not a mainstream draw yet. WNBA drew 1.3 million viewers the other night for the draft on ESPN. Now, that number, it can be credited 100% to Paige Bueckers because every other player involved was completely unknown.
This isn't about Paige lacking talent. She's got game. Nobody's disputing that. But star power? That magnetic pull that packs arenas and hijacks sports talk radio? That's Caitlin Clark's domain. And what we just witnessed with these draft numbers is the basketball audience voting with their eyeballs. And they weren't interested in the Geno-led hype machine. Let's be honest, Geno Auriemma's got a legacy. The man's won more championships than most franchises. But somewhere along the line, his critiques stopped sounding like expert analysis and started sounding a lot more like jealous uncle energy.
Although 1.3 million is a great number for the WNBA, it is significantly below what Caitlin Clark drew last year. Matter of fact, it's 50% lower than what Caitlin Clark drew last year.
You know, the type that shows up at Thanksgiving dinner with passive-aggressive jabs like, "That's nice, but back in my day." Geno's been doing that to Caitlin Clark for 2 seasons now.
You're a great college player, like Caitlin was. The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's 3rd or 4th in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
He's been downplaying her numbers, minimizing her impact, and constantly reminding everyone that her fans are delusional. Meanwhile, his star pupil just got overshadowed by someone who, spoiler alert, didn't need to wear a UConn jersey to become a national icon. The UConn PR machine may still be running, but the wheels are starting to come off. During the draft broadcast, the vibe was off. Interviews fell flat, names were mispronounced, energy was low. It was like everyone in the room knew they were standing in the shadow of last year's main event.
I'm here with Anissa and Rakia, and we are holding it down right now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
It's okay.
Sorry. What?
Go ahead, say your name.
Cheyenne Zellers. I'm so sorry. That is embarrassing. Cheyenne, I apologize, by the way. That's so embarrassing.
Even longtime broadcaster Tim Wilson didn't hold back. saying off-air that the difference between this year's draft and the last one was night and day. And he's right. One had a star that made history, the other had a star the league is trying to manufacture.
2025 second most viewed WNBA draft of all time with an average of 1.25 million viewers with a peak of 1.46 million viewers, up 119% versus 2023. And I know what the question may be, 2023, 2020. Well, Ben, just out of curiosity, because we're all curious around here, right? We all want to be well informed. What is it compared to the 2024 draft?
So let's zoom out. Why do ratings matter this much? Because in professional sports, ratings aren't just numbers, they're dollar signs. They determine ad spend, sponsor deals, TV contracts, everything. A 49% viewership drop is not a stat you shrug off. That's a marketing crisis. That's a boardroom panic. That's somebody at ESPN getting a very tense Zoom call with their boss.
It's down 49%. 49% of the audience said, yeah, I'll go watch paint dry instead. In fact, some people, Jason Whitlock, he didn't even realize the WNBA draft took place the other night. He found that out the next morning, that Paige Bueckers and the WNBA draft had actually taken place. Last year, 2.45 million, peaked with 3.09 million, up 307% from the previous high back in 2004.
Here's where things get especially awkward. ESPN and the WNBA spent months building Paige up like she was going to carry the torch into a new era. They tried to replicate the Clark playbook, feature stories, breathless coverage, teases of a generational moment. But the public didn't bite. And why should they? When you've got the original still lighting it up nightly, why would you settle for the knockoff?
601,000 from 2004. So 2024 was up 307%. From 2004, 1.06 million women viewers was the 2024 draft. Now here we go, folks. This is when we get into the nooks, into the crannies, and into the fun.
And let's not forget social media. Twitter was on fire the moment those numbers dropped. No Caitlin, no ratings, one viral post read. Another said, they tried to replace the sun with a flashlight. Brutal, but accurate. The public isn't confused. They've made their choice. Caitlin Clark isn't just part of women's basketball. She is women's basketball right now.
Why was last year's draft such a big deal? Well, Caitlin Clark was getting drafted. Reason number one, Caitlin Clark getting drafted. Reason number two, why it was such a big deal. Well, Caitlin Clark was going number one overall. And the third reason why, calling a spade here, these three women, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brink. Perfect storm. A perfect storm, a perfect bill of goods.
And that's exactly what's driving people like Geno Auriemma crazy. It must sting, right? To spend decades building the most iconic brand in women's college hoops, only to watch a player from Iowa steal the thunder. Clark did what no one outside of UConn has done in years. Made women's basketball must-watch TV. She turned regular season games into headline news. She made college gyms feel like NBA arenas. And she did it without Geno's help. In fact, she did it despite the constant side eyes from people like him.
Didn't you tell us that in 2004 it was 601,000? My point exactly. They still haven't rebounded from the days of 2004. They still haven't managed to maintain that same audience from 2004. Until Caitlin Clark showed up. Until Caitlin Clark arrived on the scene, and then they're going to boast about a measly 1.25 million. You guys want to know what's funny about 1.25 million? 1.25 million is closer to the 601,000 in 2004 than it is to the 2.45 million in 2025. We're already closer to 2004 numbers than we were to 2025 numbers.
This whole saga reveals the real problem. The WNBA and its media partners are still clinging to old formulas. They think they can build a superstar by committee, push the next face of the league button, and fans will just follow. But you can't fake charisma. You can't fake gravity. And Caitlin Clark's got both in spades.
1 million people disappeared. 1.2 million people, to be fair, disappeared. We can spin that as many ways as we want. The trend is already coming back down. The trend is already coming back down. Juju Watkins next year draft, 1.09 million. Oh, another 1 million view draft. But we went from 2.4 to 1.2 to now 1.09. Who's after Juju? My point exactly. We're already forecasting a 2027 draft of 650,000.
Paige Bueckers might be part of the future of the league. She might win titles, earn all-star nods, and have a fantastic pro career. But as far as this draft told us, she's not the one leading the way, because that lady wears number 22 in Indiana. Meanwhile, Geno can keep holding press conferences filled with condescending jabs and veiled criticisms. But while he's reminiscing about the old days, Caitlin Clark is defining the new ones.
Unlike Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers has been embraced with open and hairy arms into the WNBA. Players have embraced her potentially in ways that we don't even know about. More importantly, the mainstream media has embraced her. And I'm starting to wonder if this media-created rivalry that is building between Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark will completely overshadow Angel Reese.
When you put Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark side by side, there's a glaring question the media conveniently avoids. What holds more weight? Lifting a trophy once or completely rewriting the NCAA record books like you're the editor-in-chief? The mainstream narrative has leaned hard into Bueckers' championship win, practically framing it as the ultimate badge of greatness. But in doing so, they've dimmed the spotlight on Clark's statistical annihilation of long-standing records. Caitlin didn't just beat some old benchmarks, she left them in the dust, doing things that no man or woman has ever pulled off in college basketball.
I've seen Paige Bueckers across social media for the last 5 years, it feels like. She's an elite female college basketball player. Had some knee injuries that she's rebounded from, but she's healthy right now. So she kind of sits behind Caitlin Clark. And I think that makes her a fade for me because I think the Caitlin Clark shadow is real. I think Caitlin Clark is so dominant in changing the game.
Sure, Bueckers brought home a national title for UConn. And yes, that's a massive accomplishment that deserves applause. But let's not kid ourselves. Caitlin Clark took a sledgehammer to a record that had been cemented in place for 50 years. A half-century of scoring history, gone in a flash thanks to one player who made logo threes look routine. That's not just impressive, that's myth-making.
And for as much as people want to say Paige Bueckers is this, Paige Bueckers is that, Paige Bueckers is this, a 500,000 drop-off, okay. A 1.2 million viewer drop-off, yikes. That I'm not sure if that is okay.
And here's where it gets crazier. Caitlin didn't stop there. She wasn't satisfied with being the scoring queen. She also led the nation in assists, multiple times. Let's take a second to process that. She was dishing out the most dimes in college basketball while also scoring more than anyone in history. That's like if Steph Curry and Chris Paul merged into one terrifying, record-breaking basketball robot. We're talking about a player who dominated in both creation and execution, a rare dual threat that the game almost never sees at this level. Now, if you want the raw stats, let's do it. Clark averaged 31.6 points, 8.9 assists, and 7.4 rebounds in her final college season. That's practically a walking triple-double every night. Bueckers, a strong 21.9 points, 3.8 assists, and 5.2 rebounds. Solid numbers, no doubt, but they don't punch in the same weight class as Clark's. One was playing chess, the other was building the board and setting the rules.
Some of the reactions, people aren't going to let it skip that we're not comparing it to 2024, down 49%. Shout out to you, Jar Jar Binks. He had to let him know twice. Big win for the WNBA draft. Yeah, they did over $1 million. Big win. They're closer to 2006 numbers, 2004 numbers than they were to 2024 numbers. You guys get the point. Why skip 2024? Does 2024 not exist?
But what's even more frustrating is how the media seems determined to pretend this gap doesn't exist. Instead of celebrating Clark's avalanche of achievements, they pivot the conversation to banners and trophies. It's like comparing a volcanic eruption to a fireworks display. Sure, the latter's pretty, but one reshapes landscapes while the other just makes noise for a night. Clark's impact extended far beyond the box score. She turned ordinary games into national spectacles. She didn't just fill arenas, she filled them with anticipation, headlines, and mainstream buzz. She didn't need a championship to transform the sport. She did it through pure talent and a swagger that drew millions in. Her influence was seismic, creating waves that reached into living rooms that had never tuned into women's college basketball before.
Great showing. Everything is compared to BC, before clock. That's right, we have a BC and we have an AC type of era in the WNBA. Guess 2024 never happened. I wonder why all the numbers are always compared to 2023. We all know why.
And let's not forget the circumstances. Clark did all this while being the #1 target every night. Every team's game plan revolved around stopping her. Box and ones, triple teams, junk defenses, none of it worked. Everyone knew Caitlin was getting the ball, and she still torched them. That's legendary territory. Most stars fade under that kind of pressure. Clark, she thrived in it. Now let's compare the narrative treatment. When LeBron James broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record, the sports world came to a halt. Wall-to-wall coverage, hour-long specials, think pieces galore. Caitlin Clark? She broke the all-time NCAA scoring record, a record untouched for 50 years, and got a few headlines before the conversation pivoted to, yeah, but she doesn't have a ring. Really? That's how we're grading greatness now?
1.25 isn't dominating. You maybe haven't been following the ratings. 1.25 is a regular Caitlin Clark game on a weekend. That's regular to us. That's nothing. That's nothing to us. It is what it is.
It's this kind of inconsistency that makes you wonder what's really going on. Both Beuckers and Clark are elite talents, but only one of them is constantly subjected to a litany of qualifiers and caveats. Clark's facial expressions, her competitive fire, her very presence on the court. It's all dissected and debated. Meanwhile, Beuckers gets fluff pieces and red carpet praise. It's not just a double standard, it's a coordinated PR effort disguised as journalism. And then there's the WNBA draft presentation this year. If you were expecting a sequel to last year's dazzling, Caitlin-fueled spectacle, you were sorely disappointed. Gone were the glamour shots and big-budget polish. Instead, we got awkward interviews, fashion choices that felt more like a TikTok experiment than a professional league moment, and an energy level that could best be described as mid-afternoon nap. It didn't feel like a celebration, it felt like a reset.
I've also noticed that the media has been overwhelmingly positive in their coverage of Paige Bueckers. Now, this is pure speculation on my part, but this is what I think the media is doing. The spankers in the media actually believe that Caitlin Clark is popular because she's white. They think little girls idolize her because she lacks melanin. They think grown men watched women's basketball for the first time because a white girl was dominating the sport. I know for normal people it sounds ridiculous, but this is how our media thinks.
That shift in tone wasn't accidental. It felt like the league was making a statement. We're steering this ship in a different direction. A direction, mind you, that seemed oddly allergic to the mainstream momentum Clark had generated. Fans noticed. Social media lit up with side-by-side comparisons of last year's draft and this one. Where's the energy? Where's the class? Was the consensus. And the league offered no real explanation, just silence and vibes. This wasn't just a vibe shift. It was a calculated branding decision. The league, it seems, is trying to redefine what it wants to be. And in doing so, it may be sacrificing the very thing that brought it to the dance. Clark didn't just boost viewership, she redefined what was possible. And instead of embracing that, the WNBA is hedging its bets, hoping it can ride Paige Bueckers' narrative into a future they can more comfortably control.
I think the media is creating this rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, hoping that Paige Bueckers will become the new face of the WNBA. The media will continue demonizing Caitlin Clark while praising her rival. And they're hoping that people will instantly follow Paige Bueckers because she also lacks melanin. You see, the media is fine with Paige being the face of the WNBA because she's already proven to be a loyal comrade. They can depend on her, maybe even control her. They can't do that with Caitlin Clark, either because she is unwilling or she's realized that she does not need the media to be a mainstream draw.
The bias becomes crystal clear when you look at how differently the media treats these two stars. Caitlin Clark is constantly under the microscope. Every facial expression, every defensive rotation, every missed shot is picked apart like she's on trial. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers is practically coated in Teflon. She gets praised in every headline, even when her numbers don't match up. Some coverage has even veered into uncomfortable territory, with Clark's race being a point of criticism, while Bueckers gets a free pass. The contrast in treatment has gotten so blatant that fans are no longer whispering about it. They're calling it out loudly. What we're witnessing isn't a healthy rivalry blooming from two great players. It's a media-manufactured showdown, engineered for headlines and drama, rather than letting the game speak for itself. Instead of amplifying the strengths of both athletes and celebrating what each brings to the court, the narrative machine seems obsessed with propping one up at the expense of the other. And here's the real danger: the millions of fans who tuned in because of Clark. They're starting to notice this imbalance. They're seeing their favorite player dismissed, her impact minimized, and they're not sticking around to watch her get sidelined by media games. That's a problem, because those ratings drops, that's what it looks like when fans start checking out.
You guys are about to find out, no offense to the Paige fans, you're going to realize that once this season starts, it's still going to be Caitlin Clark 1 in jersey sales.
And honestly, it didn't have to be this way. Clark and Bueckers are both phenomenal in their own right. They could be a dynamic 1-2 punch, propelling women's basketball to new heights. Their contrasting playing styles, Clark with her range and firepower, Bueckers with her smooth control and composure, should be celebrated, not pitted against each other. This forced rivalry robs the game of something authentic. If the media would just step aside and let their stories unfold naturally, we might finally get the iconic rivalry the sport deserves. One born of respect, not manipulation. And most definitely not born from Geno's mouth. If you agree, comment "Geno is delusional" down below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.